say she knows enough. And she's never wrong. Try not to think of it in terms of right and wrong. She is a guide.
Welcome back to Whiskey and Tea. I'm C.D. McCrae, and with me today is Jose Galison of No Way Jose and the Tower Power Hour gang. I went to say Tower Power Hour gang. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The Tower Power Hour podcast.
Mhm.
And today we are going to talk about some sexy, spicy topics. Jose, how are you? How's it going?
Good. Yeah, doing well. Just a normal day. It was kind of fun seeing all the Twitter hijinks today, but I mean, doing fine. I mean, wasn't anything crazy, but wasn't a bad day either. So,
well, we'll take it. So about Twitter today. So for those of you that don't know, there has been some talk about a specific plank in the Libertarian Party platform concerning prostitution. And some people believe that it should just be decriminalized. Some people think it should be decriminalized and normalized. And some people think it should be decriminalized and we shouldn't talk about it at all or encourage it. But if we are legitimizing a way to make money, then, we can't really be too moral about it, because then we can say, well, if we want to legalize heroin, people who are dealing heroin are able to do that. But there's obviously a difference between sex and selling drugs. There's a big difference. So, Jose, I just kind of wanted to get your take on it. I saw you kind of going back and forth, but being a girl dad and a liberty-minded person, what did you think about it?
I mean, I don't know. I do think decriminalization and normalization are two different things. Like the argument that the normalization people were making was that they're kind of one and the same, and I don't think that's the case. I mean, they're trying to make the case that if you look at things like pot, that it's become more normalized as time has gone on, and it's true. But that's not the case for everything. And even then, I guess it is natural that when you have decriminalization of everything, there would be normalization to some extent. But at the same time, we're not really trying to force that normalization. If that happens naturally, sure, whatever. I mean, I wouldn't really want to normalize sex work, I guess. The dude side of me is like, hell yeah, I love whores. But then on the dad side of me is like, no, I'm not a fan of that. I mean, I don't know. It is. Yeah, it's a weird topic, but it is they are separate things. We were talking a little bit before, and it's like the example that comes to mind for me that why they're not one and the same, like decrim and normalization, is you look at strip clubs. There are plenty of people who like strip clubs, but even to this day, it's pretty legal as hell. I mean, yeah, they have weird little regulations about strip clubs and stuff. In certain places, you can't have full nude and liquor and or whatever. They have weird laws like that in different states here and there, but for the most part it's pretty much legal. You can do what you want in regards to that. You can go to a bar and you can go see naked women if you want. But I've in my daily life, I've met plenty of people, and it's even common amongst men to be like, no, I don't like that. And just to be, and even men that aren't religious, no, I don't really like the idea of having to deal with seeing naked women who, just all they want from me is my money. There are and that's fair. I mean, I've frequented it once or twice. It's not necessarily my favorite place. I mean, it is what it is, but I completely get it. So they're not one and the same. I guess you could make the case that it kind of normalized it by making it legal. Not that I can ever even recall a time when it wasn't, but it's my point being they're not one and the same. I don't really get the argument that's the case. I know the Molly or Chase to Cash. I don't know. I know she has two different names. I've actually had her on my show twice. She's actually a really nice lady. She does a lot of charity work. She's an absolute sweetheart. So, I mean, I do think her take on this is really fucking dumb. But, she is, I don't want to at all try to disparage her. She's actually a very sweet person. I mean, this is really early in my show I had her on. But she does a lot of volunteer work with animals and stuff. That's her thing. She's also had some positions in the Libertarian Party. But she's trying to make the case that you must normalize type deal. I don't necessarily know where she's going with it. it's a very weird argument, and she's trying to make the case that not normalizing it kind of like makes lives harder for sex workers, which is kind of like, okay, I mean, tough. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, no one made you do that, but like, and I don't know. I mean, to be fair to her too. I mean, from what I've understand of her, I believe. I mean, I don't think she's with him anymore, but it was like her longtime boyfriend. It was basically she did porn with, and that was kind of her sex work. Which, I mean, whatever. I guess if you're gonna do porn, I mean, not to cast judgment, but that's like if you just want to do it with your like significant other, it's not like she's out there railing randoms. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe she is now. I have no idea, but I mean, whatever. Even then, to each their own. I don't really necessarily like to exemplify that kind of behavior. At least not in the context of like a larger society thing. Like maybe me and the boys might yuck it up a little bit, but yeah, I don't necessarily think that is in a public sense something that should really be condoned in that time sense, in my opinion. But once again, I mean, I also think she's fully within her, purview to be like, oh, I like that, and that's we should normalize it. But that's outside the realm of libertarianism, because libertarianism is an extremely thin ideology, and all it is about not hurting people and not taking their stuff, and or when you're allowed to hurt people and when you're allowed to take their stuff. It has nothing to do with social norms. Like, you can be wherever the fuck you want. Like, I set off a tweet that kind of got Carrie Ann Harlos in trouble a while ago. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but I put something along the lines of racism is fully compatible with libertarianism, and I guess she like kind of agreed, and she got some shit from that. But it's true. I mean, like don't get me wrong. Like I'm not a fan of racism, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily like, maybe this will get me in trouble. I'm not someone who's like, oh my god, like like I've had friends who are racist about certain shit, like genuinely racist, not just joking. And I mean, whatever. I just that part of them, I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of dumb, because I think racism is kind of dumb. Like I mean, everyone watches Tower of Power. I make a lot of racist jokes, but I'm not genuinely racist. Like, I don't give a shit. Like my best friend is a black dude. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like it's not a thing. But yeah, I don't know. It is completely compatible with it, and like I said, I'm not really like, it's not something. I mean, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people go, oh, you're just a white guy, and so of course, but same time, if someone's like racist, like, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna like that part of them, but it's not like necessarily, depending on how they go about it, something that's gonna completely make me like, not want to be around them at all, depending on the context. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I might talk to them occasionally, but it's not really that big of a deal, especially in 2021, because it's like, how many people are really genuinely racist in this modern day and age? Like, it's pretty dumb. Yeah.
I liken to normalizing sex work. Going back to your original point, I you probably know strippers. I mean, I've known girls that dance, right?
Not personally.
Well, I know several, and like what I'm getting at is it's not a profession that they sit around and talk about at their grandmother's house. You know what I mean? Like, it's a job, and they do it. They don't plan to do it their entire life. And there absolutely is some stigma with it. So I understand Molly's point of saying that if it's not normalized, then it is still stigmatized.
Yeah.
But I think that it's okay for some jobs to be stigmatized.
Yeah.
It just comes with it. I mean, in a Goristan, right? And you have a gray and a black market. I mean, those people operating outside the, I don't know, regular market, but not black and gray market.
The white market is what it would be, but yeah.
Yeah. And, there would probably be some stigma on people that did that. It doesn't make it not a way to make a living. It just makes it not something that you would aspire to want to be. Yeah. So, and then as far as racism, I mean, I live in Louisiana, so we invented racism, and I don't know how to think like that. And I never have. I was not raised that way. I had a black nanny for the majority of my upbringing. So that was never in my wheelhouse. Like, it just wasn't something I thought about until someone told me that I should, and that's really weird. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, being racist in 2021, and the reality is that if you want to be racist, then we can have racist stand, and y'all can just go be racist in your own little community, and you cannot allow, I don't know, whoever not allow, that's cool.
You can go have your little ethno state. I don't care. Just
Right, I
don't
care.
group me into it.
Good. Y'all all go over there. All of y'all. Y'all all go congregate and sit in your garages and bitch.
Yeah.
Good. Over there.
On the top of the stigmas, though, I do want to make again stress that, like, whether you think we should, and completely embrace, sex work or not, really that's like outside the realm of even libertarianism. So like even my take of like that I don't necessarily like it. I'm not making the case at all. This is a libertarian anything. Like this is just my personal take. So. And that's all that it is in the realm that libertarianism provides nothing more than that. Like it legit is at its core a thin ideology. That's all it is. It really is as simple as like the NAP, and that's libertarianism. That's it. Everyone tries to make it more complicated than it is, and that's all that it is. That's really the case. So
I couldn't agree more. I think that the NAP is a great foundation, and I will never understand people's argument against it, or I just think it's a good foundation. We can get into the nuances of any philosophy, right? We can get into the little nooks and crannies of when it applies and when it doesn't apply, and that's fine. But for the most part, as just a solid, start no shit, and just a solid foundation. So I agree. I think that, and like you said, it's completely out of the realm of libertarianism. And if it doesn't violate the NAP, right. So speaking of libertarianism and the Libertarian Party, I was listening to your episode. It was 112, and it was with James Gentleman and Daniel from Biblical Anarchy.
It's actually Jacob, but
Jacob.
it is. I do the same thing every time. It's confusing because his channel is Daniel 3, but his name is Jacob Winograd.
And I know that. We're in like 7. Okay, Jacob, I'm really sorry. He's going to hear this and be like, we're in like 4 Discords together. But y'all had a great conversation. If you're listening and you haven't listened to that episode, highly encourage it. There's a lot of good takes in there. So much so that I really kind of wanted to expound on some of the things you said, because I think they're great points, and I think they're they're great conversation pieces, right? So the question was posed about libertarianism. It was a long question. If you go back and listen, it was a long question, but
it was a long podcast too. I think it was almost 2 hours long. Yeah, so.
I listened to the whole thing I think 3 times. So basically, essentially, we were asking, is there incentive in politics, to be political, for lack of a better term, to be as political as what we would consider political, and just you're just pandering, and you say what you need to say, not necessarily what you mean. You end up like the GOP and the DNC. So we were asking, is there incentives for libertarians to be political? Because we are anti-political, like you said. So what is there to be there for? So anyway, that was the question. You started with the LP is a middling thing. And I thought that was interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about what a middling thing you think it is?
I mean, middling is just a fancy term for just like kind of like a almost milquetoast, kind of neither committing to one or the other, because it is the main thing is like, the big move now is we're going to come in and in like the LPMC message is like, we understand, like, we're not here for all these political gains, we're here for messaging, and that's what we care about, and that's the main focus. But then like I feel like to some extent like you lose some of the message in the very act of being a political party. At least if you're a political party that at its core is kind of sort of anti-political. So like you're getting at, like it's in my opinion, the truest expression of libertarianism is anarchy, like an ANCAP essentially. So, and that's kind of like, so, but you're like, oh, but we need to have this political party that operates within the political system in order to do this. So, I get, and I'm not at all saying that it isn't consistent with principles, because a lot of people will be like, well, okay, well, well, I stand Spooner, and it's completely like, and I get it. Like, yes, I am not one of the people who makes a moral case against political involvement. I don't. I actually think that's kind of dumb when people try to make it like, be like, oh, it's immoral to vote or this or that. I mean, I think it depends on what you're voting for. But like, yeah, I'm not making the moral case, so I get that. But what I'm saying is, I do think it kind of muddies the waters of the message a little bit. But then the other end, so like you basically have the one end of the messaging, and then you kind of muddy it there. But the other end is like political game. So you're in a political party, you're playing a political game, and part of political games is like vying for power and stuff, like that kind of stuff with GOP, DNC, the kind of stuff they do. And but at the same time, like we're kind of also not doing that. So we're in this, that's what I'm saying, we're middling. We're kind of this like in between place where we're neither committing to one or the other. Like I actually think, I know a lot of people shit on like agorists and stuff, or like I actually think if you were truly committed to messaging and you wanted a pure messaging, that would be what you do. You'd essentially try to, I don't know, you'd try to build yourself up in your community. You'd try to act, because I think the best way to have a good message is to live out the message. Like that's the best way to go about it. People see that, they react accordingly. I mean, yeah, maybe you can make the case that you don't get as much of a platform. I mean, I'm sure that's the case. I mean, as technology improves, that becomes less of a case. Because I mean, shit, you look at Dave Smith. I know he's going for the LP presidential, candidacy or whatever, but even then, he's kind of to some extent bigger than the LP himself. So he is getting a slight boost with this possible presidential run, but even if he wasn't doing that, he's still kind of bigger than the LP. So there goes that. I mean, yeah, I guess you're kind of stacking that boost on there, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming at, where they're like a middling thing, where they're neither really one or the other. So it's kind of like you almost have these two paths. I mean, if anyone's like into RPGs, it'd be kind of like if you had like two conflicting, because usually you like build up a class, like, oh, I'm going to make a mage and make a warrior. So you like two conflicting classes, and you're kind of like building up skill points in both sides, but you could commit to one or the other, and you'd probably be better off if you did that. So, and that's kind of why, like, it's why I'm not a big fan of the LP in like that route. That's one of many reasons, because I feel like you'd almost be better off to committing to one or the other, because like and this is kind of why I've said before, I do prefer like the Paleo, Hoppian, like those type of routes, because at least they're kind of committing to the power route, like they're committing to one of the routes, whereas the LP is kind of this like in between thing, and that's kind of how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm just some dude talking on my ass. That's basically what I do. But I mean, time will tell. But that's kind of how I see things. Yeah.
Well, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I've been doing this a long time, so I know. But if the Mises Caucus were to be successful next year, and again, we can define success. It's arbitrary.
Yeah, I know what you mean by success, though. But yeah, I mean, we can fiddle around the definition of success, and that would be kind of what I'd do. But I get what you mean by success. Yeah, and I actually think they probably likely will be. So
I think, and I too am very much into localism. I think that localism is where the cracks in the foundation of the cathedral happen. It's states nullifying. And that starts on the county level, So that's as far as the now. If 2022 comes around and 2020 happens again, Pennsylvania happens again, we can't move forward that way, then no, I think the fervor of the Mises Caucus needs to be redirected, and it needs to go directly into localism. All that activism, everything just needs to go into your local community. And I think that would be so for me, it's a win-win. And I am super white-pilled. I'm like the most annoyingly optimistic person. So I see a win where, okay, if we're not successful, then if Dave Smith decided, okay, we need to redirect, and he would redirect people into their local communities, we would win. Maybe not everybody, I'm not saying everybody, but if that to me would be success. If we could get the majority of counties in Florida with some liberty-minded people in charge. Now, I don't like people being in charge. I'm not for that. But while they are, and this is the realm of reality that we live in, then yeah, having more and more liberty people on the local level saying no. So yeah, I agree. And it is a middling thing, and they need to. That's why I think the Mises Caucus will be successful, because we aren't trying to middle. Now, we can make the argument, and you do. I don't know if it was you or if it was Jacob, but one of you made the argument that even in Texas, you're seeing the Mises Caucus of Texas start to capitulate to the Libertarian Party of Texas, and we all know how phenomenal that organization is. So
that was Jacob, but yeah.
So I mean, that could be dangerous, but I think the majority of us are not trying to take that route anymore. Because like you said when we were talking before, for 50 years that hasn't worked. And even in your show, in the conversation you guys had, you say that it hasn't worked, and we can't capitulate, and we can't be nice, can't play nice, and I think that's what scares the LP to death, is that we don't play nice and we don't care, and you can illegally kick us out, you can whatever, but we're not going anywhere. And I think that is really telling, right? Like, people got booted from their positions, and none of them left. None of them stopped. It's just been, the three that got booted, have done nothing but double down. So that's where I see hope in this thing that I've worked so hard on for so many years.
I do want to be clear. I would classify myself as white pilled as well. Because a lot of people will take people like me, or like say Pete Quinones, or like I don't know, any of the people who like aren't necessarily like on the board for the LPMC train, and they'll go, "Oh, you guys are black pilled." I'm not. Like I just don't necessarily see it the same way you guys do necessarily. I think what y'all are doing is likely, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, to not be ideal. And that doesn't mean there's no merit to it whatsoever. It's just there may be a better way. But even then, I think I do think there's good stuff on the horizon, like LPMC, whether that's works out or regardless, because I just kind of, it's to some extent, not to sound cheesy, but the acting of the free market, whether it's even if it has nothing to do with LPMC whatsoever outside this political realm. I mean, we're seeing shit now, like people, the way I know Clint from Liberty Lockdown was just on Dave's show, and he was talking about, and he kind of brought up how he was worried that maybe they would try to do some sort of like a national lockdown again for this Omicron bullshit or whatever. And in my head, I was kind of like, part of me a little bit was like, I kind of hope they do, because if they did, I guarantee you places like Texas, Florida, New Hampshire would be like, fuck you. And their state governments would probably come out hard as fuck against it, and all they would do is essentially increase what's already happening, which is like essentially people moving to those areas. And also, like, I feel like we're starting to see a strong movement of people to like not urban, but to rural areas.
Yeah.
And so I think people to some extent are acting their incentives. So people who are, you know, people who buy into the state narrative, they're acting their incentives. But when we have people who are even a little bit like us are acting their incentives, and it is kind of creating this bifurcation, this separation of the two. And I want an increase of the separation of the two. And I think that's happening whether we do, LPMC or Hoppy in this or whatever the fuck, any of that shit aside, like, I think it's already just kind of happening on its own anyways. So, I mean, it's just more a matter of like on the margins. Like, does this make a difference here? Does it make a difference there? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. But at the end of the day, I am hopeful, and I think things are working out one way or the other. People are acting their incentives, and people who are liberty minding are acting their incentives, and people who like their chains are acting their incentives. And I'm fine with that. The further the divide we create between us and the people who like authority, the better it is, the more voluntary it becomes. Because if you're someone who likes authoritarianism, far be it from me to keep you away from it. Like, go have it. And the more of a divide, the more clear the contrast becomes between the two, the more it becomes voluntary. Because in this, like, to use the word again, middling, in this middling area we're at now, where it is kind of this wishy-washy authoritarianism, it's kind of like, you can kind of like justify it. But if we ever get to a point to where we have, say, cities are basically like North Korea, and then out in the country are kind of like, I don't know, what would be a good thing to call them? I don't know, kind of like the country, I guess. Like,
Right.
then it would kind of like, if you're in the city, like, okay, you had the option to not live there. I don't know what the fuck to tell you. Like, so that's on you, bro.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a hot take that whenever the vaccine started to roll out, that and it was all compliance, and compliance is loose, you know what I mean? People that aren't being forced by anything, just going and getting it because the TV told them to. I said, and then they approved it for children who, oh my God, it's so scary. It's so scary. But
isn't that the thing
will,
not to cut you off, isn't that the thing that I haven't been following, but I think the Omicron one, the big thing they're talking about how it affects children more, which is like convenient. I believe. I may be wrong. I've heard little murmurs of that. And I also find it ironic. I'm pretty sure, I haven't been following it closely, so if anyone's listening and I'm wrong, it's because I generally fucking phase out this current event shit because I kind of don't fucking care. But I have heard that it like supposedly came from Africa, which ironically also is the place that's had like pretty much one of the most success because they don't give a fuck. And they've had like the least amount of cases. Everyone's been fine. But oh no, here's this killer fucking variant coming from these people who are doing just fine, and it's conveniently, supposedly, supposed to affect the children more who were trying to really get fucking vaccinated. Which, I mean, hopefully we'll see more of a spirit of like, fuck you, because I'm not gonna lie, I've said it before. This is one thing I've gotten in trouble for, but like, if it really comes down to it, like for me as a father, like if that's what I gotta do to fucking keep food on the table for my family, sure, I'll fucking whatever. I'll sacrifice my health. But now if it comes down to my kids, fuck you. Like,
absolutely.
Fuck you so fucking hard.
And it should be, and all parents should look at it that way. I mean, there's no reason for it. There's no reason. And but people are still doing it. People are still making appointments for their children. It's sick. To me, it's sick. I find it sick. And so whenever they started to roll that out, I said, well, 10 kids will need to die before people wake up and realize that this is not okay. And the government getting involved in the raising of your children and your children's health and your health, and making this normalizing your medical history being public. It will take people literally losing kids, like, because losing your grandparents didn't work, right? We all had to wear masks. I mean, it was all, and then the masks didn't work, and then they worked, and I don't know. I guess you have to wear 2 or something. I gave up a long time ago. In Louisiana we don't mask. I think New Orleans does, but we don't claim them. And so but yeah, the further the divide, right? So the people who are say, oh, well, those children died, you know, whatever. Well, okay, well, y'all go over there. You know, the ones that are okay with children dying from an unnecessary vaccination, y'all go over there. And these parents get they get nothing, right? They lose their child and there's no recourse. There's no, you know, did you or one of your loved ones take the 3rd booster shot? Dial 1-800-RBAD, you know, like,
you contract mesothelioma.
right. Like I was like, you're going to hear that. But there's no recourse. There's nothing you can do if it hurts you or your children. And and not to say that money can replace your child's health, but to me, that says that it says a lot. It's very telling. That in of itself, screw the science. When the company says they're not going to be liable if something bad happens to you, that is that tells me that you don't know what can happen. So anyway, yeah, I think the further the divide, the further the wedge, the bigger the wedge, the better. And whatever that takes, I'm here for it. Like I said, I don't want 10 children to die, but if that's what it takes to save the rest of the children from having to get this thing.
I mean, it depends on the kids, really, you know.
Right. I mean, I know some kids.
Just kidding.
Totally know some kids that, you know.
Yeah.
We could encourage the vaccine for them. Let's see what happens. But yeah, and I mean, I'm a secessionist. I've been a secessionist a long time. And I think that's what I really want to see. And even if it's like on the parish level, the county level, you know, like I'll take it.
It's not just throw it off, but I know there've been a lot of people I know, like in my work and stuff, and then online I've been seeing a lot too talk like, oh, who's gonna run for 2024? And a lot of people are like, ooh, is like a DeSantis Gabbard gonna do it, or is it? And a lot of people are thinking like Buttigieg and friggin' Kamala, and like part of, and you know what, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit off, but I kind of don't want a DeSantis Gabbard. I actually kind of partially want like a fucking Kamala Buttigieg, because I think that would, you know, completely like keep moving it down the path we're seeing, where you were already seeing more states having secession talks. We're seeing more nullification. We're seeing more soft nullification, you know, more like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm fine with it. Like, I mean, yeah, it'll probably suck for some, but it's like, okay, well, you know, I mean, like, I know it's not feasible for everybody, but, you know, those that can move to New Hampshire, probably ideally. If you can't move to New Hampshire, move to Texas or Florida. If you can't do that, you know, try to move to a red state. If you can't do that, move to a more rural location. If you can't do that, even then, there's probably, you know, certain things you can do within your own area. But like, yeah, I mean, that's in like a Buttigieg, a Kamala type thing. I could see that accelerating that. Whereas I think a DeSantis Gabbard, we'd see more of what we saw with Trump. And if anything, I think that might lull people back in the system a little bit. Like, oh, okay, maybe it's all right. We'll be okay. Look, it looks what we have here. You know, these guys are great. You know, and I think they'd be even worse than Trump, to be honest. So
they would be, and they would spend more. They would spend more money.
Yes,
they would spend more money
because they're far more of the system than Trump is.
Yes.
So
yes,
yeah, they're basically wolves in sheep's clothing. So
yeah. I mean, I know Tulsi isn't a Republican, but DeSantis is a rhino. I hate to tell everyone in Florida. Sorry.
I mean, I love him as a governor. He's great as a governor. Yeah,
he is a great governor.
Yeah.
But if he were to make it any further, he would be in their pockets. You know, it would not take long. It would not take long. We'd probably end up in another war. Honestly, we'd end up you know, some goddamn where terrorism is on the rise, you know, gotta go fight it.
We'd be giving RoboCops to fucking Israel, so yeah.
So I do. I think that if we were gonna be successful, then 2024 is the time. And I think a Kamala, whoever, whoever, and her would be amazing, because I think at that point there would be legislation passed that anyone of not even a free thinker, not even that, like a regular person that's just fed up, they're on their 7th booster because that's what they were told, and they're going to lose their job. People will just have enough, and I'm with you. It'll just keep on perpetuating violence. We'll have mostly peaceful protests continuing. We'll have, it will not, that will just intensify. And if it intensifies, it creates a bigger wedge. Bigger wedges turn to secession.
Yes.
And I too am for, moving. Louisiana currently is under a Democrat tyrant who, talk about a majority ruling a majority, was reelected slimly. I mean, it was bad. So you have half the state that hates him and half the state that loves him. And as soon as he's gone, we will have another red governor. I promise you that. And when that happens, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more advertisement come here too.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying, it's my little shithole, and it's mine, and I love it. And I'm, born, raised, and stayed here. But we've just been under a freaking Democrat for almost 8 years now. So as soon as he goes away, I really do think you're going to, because we don't mask. It's just like Florida. We don't mask. People aren't getting vaccinated unless they work for corporate something, none of that. They're having a shot for 100 or whatever, where they're giving people $100 to go get it. I'm like, we are so broke, and I won't get it, but we are so broke, the state and the country, right? Where is this money just appearing from, And then, I don't want to be like, oh, taxation is death, but like, it really fucking pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like, so you're going to take my money and give it to these people for, I'm not shocked anymore by anything that they do, but I do get astounded at the level of depravity.
But Louisiana's a good example, though, of kind of what I was getting at, because even Louisiana, like, there are some rural areas. So, like, you can have the most Democrat, like, crazy governor you want. There's some areas that, like, they're not gonna give a fuck. They're like, who's the governor? Like,
right.
and
the sheriff runs it. The sheriff runs the whole thing. So and most sheriffs around here, they're, they don't. Most sheriffs around here don't want to govern you.
Yeah.
Like, they're not in the business of. No, they're not perfect, and I'm not talking about like city police or whatever. But most sheriff's departments are run by sheriffs who have no intention of governing your life at all. They just want you to not. They pretty much, go by the nap. And the rural areas you're talking about is where I'm from, and I can tell you, the sheriff that's been there for, I think he's 16 years now or something. He's been reelected. He walks around in plain clothes. His deputies walk around in plain clothes. They have a Glock and their belt, but like, they don't walk around in armored, and because the sheriff there doesn't want people to be afraid of the police, and they don't get involved unless you do something bad. They don't want, because they don't want to. It's not their. He'll tell you that's not our goal. Our goal is just to make sure y'all are safe.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people that, like, look, I know it's not glamorous, but it is safe.
Yeah.
And if you were ever gonna, it's not New Hampshire, it's not Miami, it's not Austin, but it's very safe.
Yeah.
Very.
One thought too I've had before, because I live out in a rural part of Florida. But I've gone and like driven around in like even more rural parts. And I know one thought I had once when I was out like in a very rural part. I was like just looking around and I was like, there's nothing around, no one around. It was just like I think it was like an orange tree, it's just for miles and miles and miles. And I was like, to some extent, this is anarchy. Like, there's no one here fucking with me. Like, but then on the other hand, this is one thing I touched on with like we touched on in my Dune episode we just did where we covered that. We were kind of covering how like you look at the Fremen or whatever, who were like these people who live in the desert and have to like deal with the hardships. They're essentially an anarchist community, but with that comes hardship, and it is kind of like there is a trade-off, I think, in some extent with liberty, and you got to be able to work a little bit more. And that's kind of the point where you like I'm getting at, where you go into like the country and like you just see there's nothing around, and it's like it's just land, and it's like no one's fucking with you. There like people can't enforce government on you if there aren't people. So the less people there are, to some extent, the more anarchy there is. So there's less people to infringe on each other, and that also has that hand in hand effect of like, okay, well, you're going to have to buckle down a little bit more, and there's going to be more work to be done. And this is one thing I've been talking about a lot, and I do think like in Magical and Capistan, it's not necessarily going to be the cyberpunk, sick ass world we think it is. I mean, it will be to some extent, but there's going to be a lot of like you gotta get your hands dirty, because this is one thing too I've learned from like being like agorism and stuff, and like where like one of the big things a lot of people make fun of, like, oh, you think you're just gonna grow plants and fucking end the government, but it's like, I mean, really, it's more just about being self-sufficient. Right, so it's like, right. And it doesn't even mean you necessarily have to be one of growing the vegetables, but maybe you should know someone who grows vegetables, or it's just more a community like that. Because, and like, if we had more of a society like that, say the American dream wasn't what it is, and the American dream was having 5 acres and a small farm. If that was the American dream, like some of the shit we saw in the lockdowns with some of the supply like chains issues and stuff like that, it would have been nothing. Because like I know, like say with like bacon, where that was an issue with supply chains, it was like, well, okay, well, I'll just go hit up Bob. He's got some pigs, like it wouldn't be a thing. And it's I don't know, like some of the shit we do, like we think of it as like, oh, this is more efficient, but it's like, how is it more efficient to be getting like, I don't even know what I don't take this as gospel fact, but I know like when it comes to like say like pork, like the vast majority of our pork comes from like 3 or 4 fucking major producers, some of these like super farms. So it's like, how is that more efficient to have these super farms? Wouldn't it be more efficient to be 5 miles down the road there's someone who has pigs, and then 3 miles on the road someone has cows? And it doesn't mean you necessarily have to be the one to do it, but it's just it's a different society. It's more decentralized. And I don't know. I think there's something to that. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but
no. I come from that. Like I come from co-ops and like country. My grandmother would bring cotton. Her double first cousin and best friend in life.
Husband? I'm just kidding.
Not quite.
Just fucking around.
She would make
I have
jam.
A double cousin too, by the way.
Yeah,
I have 4 double cousins.
I didn't know that existed until my mom. But she would, they would can things. They would make jams. They would, fresh bacon because so and so down the road had pigs, and corn and everything, whatever. And my family on that side they grew up farming. That's what they did. So I get it. It's sacrifice, but at the same time, I always tell people like having freedom is sacrifice. If when it's all centralized, it's all convenient. But when you decentralize it, you don't have a Walmart. You have the butcher shop and the bakery, and and you go to all these different stores or houses, like you said. Like if y'all all live on 100 acres, and you just kind of voluntarily, I'll trade you that, barter. Basically, that's what I always imagine. We would just barter. But at the same time, Jose, that's like really hard to get people jonesed for that, you know? So I've often wondered, like, do we have the internet? Do we have iPads?
I
Like,
think
how
we
do
would,
you
yeah.
like? You have kids, right? And I
Yeah.
don't want to cut you off, but like, you have kids, and like, what if you decided, you and your wife decided, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna buy these 5 acres in the middle of nowhere, Florida, and we're gonna grow oranges and whatever, raise pigs, whatever. And then the kids were like, well, what about the iPad? Do I still get to keep my iPad? Because digging wells is fun and all that, but I like this iPad and this internet and this AC, you know? So how do you talk to people who immediately want to put the idea down because it's hard work?
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think these are exclusive things. There's things that are opposite. I think it's, I mean, these would still be things. I mean, there still would be, I don't know. I actually think we'd probably end up having, to some extent, better products than like iPads and stuff, because I mean, you look at like tablets and like there's what, a handful of companies that make them, but a lot of them is because there's IP and this and that, and like I think in a true like society like that, we would see a bigger divide. But even then, in like kind of what we're talking about, like if we're kind of creating this like bifurcation, this divide, we would still have these things. We would still be able to touch into like, what these fucking technocrats are having. We'd still be able to buy their products. It just, we wouldn't enjoy some of the other luxuries, I guess, or quote unquote luxuries. You'll own nothing and be happy type bullshit. Like I don't know. I guess I guess I don't see that as an issue. We'd still have that. But I am, the kind of point I'm getting is it does take a little bit more hard work. But it's another thing I touched on that Dune episode was I kind of like realized like maybe to some extent anarchy is a little bit fighting against human nature, which is kind of contrary to what a lot of people say. Because I think it was Ron Swanson in the Parks and Rec that said at one point, he's like, if you God, I forget how the line is. It's like if you give a man the opportunity to do nothing, or I don't remember how he says, but like if a man has the option to do nothing, that's what he'll do, or something like that. And that's true. So like men or human beings in general kind of choose convenience, but I guess it is kind of the thing that we need to not choose convenience, choose what is. It, I don't know, and I guess in a sense, I actually think it's more rewarding to have like liberty and stuff. So and I guess this is kind of like a time preference thing. So it is a matter of like what is quick and easy or what is more rewarding in the long run. And so, I mean, and I guess that's kind of the thing. We're creating this divide against people who like what's quick and easy and like what's rewarding in the long run. And I'm fine with that. Okay, if you want quick and easy, go have quick and easy. And I think we're gonna have people who are gonna start, pushing for what's, good in the long run, and that's what I want. So, I mean, if that's fighting against human nature, I'm fine with that. I just want to find my other group of people who are fighting against human nature. So, yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
And it's I liken it kind of to, you're familiar with the Hunger Games. I know
yeah.
it's kind of
I never
corny,
read the
but
books. I watched the movies, but yeah,
okay, but you had complete control with convenience, and then you had what was depicted as like a harder, less convenient life in the outer states, and the whatever they were called, the outer territories, right?
mm.
Um, and in the capital, but it was completely controlled. So all of your conveniences were provided by basically a single source, as they are now. Whenever, when 5 people own all of America, and all of, then, do you, what are you trading? And like you said, but having the experience that we have now and the history that we have behind us to be able to look at it and say, maybe the agrarians weren't so bad, and maybe they did kind of have it figured out. Whenever you're going back to that and you have that to go off of, it's easy to choose what's good in the long run, because you know what happens if you don't. And I think that's the beauty of today and our generation, and the Ron Paul kids, the young liberty people that can say, well, I was a child left behind. I remember flying before TSA, which is insane. to go. And so I'm just saying, like, we know better. But like you said, the people who still want to choose that convenience, who don't want to take that route, will go on. Don't hang out. Just leave me the fuck alone, and my children, and their education, and my health, and I think that there would be you would see a really cool market appear. You would see, rural hospitals, and that, completely change the game on healthcare. It's not an insurance thing. It's a real, this is what it costs, not an inflated price. And you would see a lot less medicine prescribing, and a lot more eat better and walk more. Mm-hmm. Instead of just feeding your kids pills. I mean, I know so many kids, who were just fed pills as a kid because they were impulsive. Well, maybe the kid is just smart. I don't know, but just feeding them pills is not an answer. And then you end up with an entire generation of overly medicated, overly stimulated people who are insane.
Yeah, I was given Ritalin as a kid, and then as I got older, I learned how to adjust to that thought pattern that I had that was prescribed as being a negative thought pattern. And now, if anything, I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I get how at a young age, a young, energetic man or boy was an issue, but like now it's kind of like, well, I just had a different thought process than a lot of kids, and if anything, I actually think it's better than a lot of you guys' fucking thought processes, because I mean, I don't think I'm a genius, but I think among the general population, they're pretty fucking stupid, and it's not that hard to tower above them. So
no, it's not. They set the bar so low, for sure. I think the same way. I know so, and it's all, as a kid, I was deemed impulsive because if a question was asked in class and I knew the answer, did not understand why the teacher would not call on me when I raised my hand, and why she kept calling on all these kids who don't know the answer. Like, let's move on. Clearly, I know the answer. Why are you not picking? And I would just say the answer. I get tired of everyone saying the wrong answer. But then that was impulsive, so we couldn't have that. And yeah, why don't parents just figure out that their kids are just like people too? I'm sure you understand. You have children, like that they're gonna be who they're gonna be, and you don't need to make them adapt to you.
Oh yeah. My youngest is a little me. She's a fucking asshole, but she's a genius, and she's funny, and she's super athletic, but she is a handful.
and you adjust because you're a good parent. That's what you're supposed to do, and not say, oh well, you're an asshole, so you need to be on, something to make you not. No, the kid needs to run. Go run.
Yeah.
I was a talker, and I was really into history, and I would follow people around and tell them all the stories. That was so annoying. I know, it's so annoying, but I'm lucky that I had family that supported it, and they were like, okay. Because they knew I had to get it out. I had to tell somebody. So, I think that you would see an awesome little society emerge if we all decided to, if there was a group of us that decided to do that. And that's all it really takes, is a group of us to get together and say that we're just not going to do this anymore. I mean, a lot of people like to bring up the Amish and stuff, but it's true.
Yeah.
You just decide we're not doing this. And it made me scary. I mean, look at Ruby Ridge. It could for sure be scary.
Yeah.
And it could you can be in danger, but you could also eventually they just get worn out.
Yeah, but the problem with Ruby Ridge and Waco is that people always bring up, especially me being an agorist, people always bring up Ruby Ridge and Waco. I'm like, oh, you just get Ruby Ridge and Waco. It's like, okay, but no one's fucking saying you should go be out and be a fucking single unit yourself and not have any community whatsoever and just be like, fuck you, federal government. But like, that's the issue. Like I think we don't need that much. It's kind of the idea of like everyone knows of the 3%ers and the whole idea of that it only took 3% for the American Revolution. I'm not saying we have a violent revolution, but I'm saying if you took that same energy and you applied it to just, hey, I want to act free and I'm just going to behave as a free man, and hey, you want to act free too? Okay, we'll trade together. Like if you took that same energy, it doesn't take this idea. It's this idea that we need to save the entire nation. No, save yourselves and save those who think alike of you. That's it. Like fuck the rest. I mean, not even necessarily fuck the rest. Like you behave the manner I just described, and the ones who like that will come to you, and the ones that don't won't. And that's that. And whatever. But you don't need that many. I think I said something a while back that was like we need an underground railroad of liberty, is essentially. But like, and that's what we need. And like, just and that's what I'm kind of getting at. But I know like the free staters in my head kind of have it right. Kind of. Like I don't think we need to concentrate to one focal location, but I do think we need to sort of concentrate. It needs to be more decentralized concentration where it's like you have people like essentially you have the main hubs like New Hampshire and then Florida and Texas. And then furthermore, kind of like I got it earlier, you have the people move to rural areas. And even then within the urban areas, they're kind of create their own little like niche of people who are like a little mini community within there that were like, so you kind of essentially make this informal, decentralized network of liberty-minded people without any sort of anything. I mean, if we have formalized ones, sure. Like for people looking for it, John Bush has the Freedom Cells. I don't know the site, but look, that's one of them. That's a great one for that if that's what you're looking for. But yeah. I mean, that's I think what we need.
Me too.
Like there's, go ahead.
Me too. I agree. And you, if you get enough people together, and by enough, I mean 3 or 4 families, eventually, if you're not doing anything wrong and you're not breaking any laws, I mean, they'll find a law that you're breaking. Sure, I get that. But if you're not, eventually they'll just, if you're out in those rural areas and you know that the sheriff is cool and he's not interested in telling you what to do with your life, as long as you're not hurting anybody or their property, do it.
Yeah.
The hardest part at that point is still property taxes. You can get into all that. I mean, whatever. But if that's the worst part, we've done something better.
Yeah.
And we can worry with property tax. We keep chipping at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that's just going to go away magically, but over time, like say with like the Freedom Cell concept, and one thing John Bush was talking about, like as it grows, you get to a point to where you're more able to have because his ideal, I know when he's talking about before, he said his ideal situation, it gets to the point where it grows so large, we're like, hey, here's this network of people, and we don't want to do this specific, X, Y, and Z anymore. Well, what can we negotiate on? Because I mean, we still want to live peacefully among you, but we don't want to pay this tax or that tax. Okay, that's fair. We'll pay this tax because it's for roads or whatever, or that and that. But you get to a point where you kind of you have a little bit more negotiating power to some extent. So, and the beauty thing of like John Bush's Freedom Cells is completely non-political. It's just a group of people. Like, I mean, that it is what it is. So, yeah.
My favorite example of that, have you ever seen there's a documentary on Netflix, and it was a big news story whenever it was going on, Wild Wild Country?
Isn't the cult one? Yeah.
Yes.
I did. I watched I think 1 or 2 episodes. I didn't watch the whole thing. Yeah.
The Rajneeshis just bought land in bumfuck Washington State or Oregon. It was in Oregon, and took over this little town, and they got their people on the local county council where they were just running things, and there weren't enough people living in this tiny community to outnumber them. There was more of them than there were natives. So that was kind of had ulterior motives, and it wasn't good. But I'm just saying, they just bought up land that was for sale and decided we live here now.
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think they renamed the streets, like, right, like if a cult can do it from India, I would assume or hope that a group of liberty-minded people who do understand, what they're doing and the law and how to operate within it, there's nothing stopping us. So I am all for, as much as I am part of the party, I'm all for that. I would love for that to be our end goal, quite frankly. To where I think that a party works to some extent, and I just look at how, unfortunately, in a sheep-minded society, people need to feel like they're part of something. It's hard to get people to think like individuals. It's really hard because people don't want to be individuals. People don't want to solve their own problems, and they don't want to not be a part of a group. So I like the LP because it gives some kind of established group to say, look, you can be, there's these people. But it has been polluted by people that just, I'll never understand. I do understand how we got here, but how no one until right now has really done any work on a national scale to take it over. Quite frankly, I've been watching it since 2000. It's been almost 15 years now, and I get frustrated, but I also believe that it just creates a group of people to get people to listen, that you're not alone, right? They don't want to be alone, and that's why it's hard to get people to leave the Democratic Republican Party, because they don't want to be alone, and they don't want to be alone in leaving.
Yeah.
And so I totally applaud Konkin and his vision, and if we could get there first, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
You're
100% right in the community aspect, because that's kind of what you're getting at with the party. And this is the same argument. A lot of people know who's been following me. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any of that. And that is actually a legit argument I'll give to the theists, because a lot of people, you bring that up in the theism argument, is that there's community there to be had, and there's not a whole lot of atheism communities. Essentially Satanism, that's essentially what Satanism is. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's legit people who worship Satan. For the most part, Satanism is atheists who just like to be edgy and fucking like have a little group of their own. And that's essentially a community of atheists. I think it's kind of dumb, but whatever, teach their own. But that is a legit argument for theism, that it's like there's community there, and there is a positive aspect of theism. And that's the same thing when it comes to political involvement or not, that they have that. That's kind of what I was getting at before with the freedom cells. That is it is right now. Yes, there's a better infrastructure for political parties to have a sense of community among liberty-minded people. But you look into. I'm not the kind of person who necessarily needs community. I'm not really a super social person in that sense. I know it's funny because I'm on social media, I'm on podcasts, I'm very in that way, but I'm a person who's completely capable of being alone with my family and not needing anyone else. I don't give a shit. But I know that's not most people. And but yeah, so that you do have things like the Freedom Cells, or I know I think Jason Stapleton has his
the Nomad
Network. Yeah. So there's stuff like that. So there are networks that are building up, and I do think that's important. So I do think there is a negative aspect to political involvement in general. So whether it be the DNC, LP, RNC, whatever, but
they're all the same.
Yeah,
they're all the same.
So I guess get involved in those type things if that's your thing. I don't necessarily need those things in my opinion, but I guess I probably should do them just to help build them up. But I don't know. I just haven't.
It's tough. It's as someone who's done it, it's it can be disheartening. Talk about a black pill. It can be tough. But I've learned over the course of years to just love on the ones that show up
Yeah.
and appreciate them, and just take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not for being mediocre, and that is the part that I heavily disagree with. And like I said, I consider success arbitrary. Because I don't think I think 1% is a lot, but I think when you lose voters, which voting is a whole thing, but when you lose voters in an election cycle, that's not good. That's not success. So if you can go from 4 and 5% to 1%, that's not success. But we can do it. We've done it before, and hopefully, like I said, I really just look at it as a way to chip away at the foundation. And if you can just get enough, and then if simultaneously there's also freedom cells growing, that way people have an option, right? To where the Libertarian Party is a little bit, it's a party, right? It's a little bit, in most people's eyes, established, and there's, some insurance there, right? As opposed to just a group of people. But some people will be like, you know what? Screw that whole thing. I'm going to bypass all that. I just want to go live. I just want to move out with these people. And if those two things could simultaneously happen, we would take over entire states. But the LP has to stop fighting against itself. That has to stop first. And stop being mad at people that don't want to be a part of the party.
Yeah.
I think that's silly. I realize parties need money and fundraising, but do a better job of that.
Yeah.
Go find people willing to spend their money. Don't get mad at the people who are for liberty and not the party.
Yeah. Fun fact for people like me who are for liberty but not for the party: you can show up to the party events. No one's going to stop you. They're fun. I'm not going to lie. I've been to a few of them. They are fun. You don't have to do any of that gay-ass voting shit or any of the other stuff they do. You just show up. You can. I went to one. I was talking to Michael Heiss. Completely was discussing with him how, like, I disagree with him. Completely had a full-on autism argument, and not even an argument, just polite discussion. And we moved on with our days. It was fun. No one cared. Like, it is what it is. You can show to these events. These are great places to meet people, and I don't know. It was a fun time. I mean, and,
totally.
And a lot of people give me shit. They're like, "Oh, you're an agorist going to these events." I'm like, yeah, I wasn't like I was like in any way being like, hey, political involvement, this or that. I was literally just showed up to drink beers with people I enjoy the company of. Like, that's it.
We can be in the same. We can want the same things and not go about it in the same way.
Yeah.
And I know that's super my niece's chair is gonna kill me for this, but I just would rather know that ahead of know that pretty quick and talking to you that this is not going to be your jam. Maybe agorism is their jam. Okay, well, here's a list of books if they're into reading. Here's a list of podcasts. Here's a list of people. Go get involved with them. Go find a freedom cell close. And then next. Just keep going, and don't get hung up on. Don't take everything so fucking personal. That's the thing I don't like. Just stop taking. So what? Someone doesn't want to be a part of the party. Why are there 31 people jumping on this comment train? Keep going. Say, great. I hope whatever you're doing is working, because I need that to work in case this doesn't.
Yeah. I will say, too, if you encounter someone who's becoming belligerent, whether you're an LPMC person or you're an agorist person or whatever, if you're encountering somebody who's being belligerent, you have to realize you guys kind of have the same end goal. So if someone's being belligerent, you're probably not going to reach them. You're better off just go, oh, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way, and move on. Because people have this thing, whether it be the LPMC types or the agorist type. I'll be honest, it's probably more prevalent around the agorist types, where they get kind of belligerent and be like, oh, well, what you guys are doing is wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's like, if someone's not able to have that discussion and not get upset about it, it's better to not upset them than to upset them. Like, there's no point. Like, you're just going to piss them off, make them dig their heels in more. You're better off just be like, oh, okay. Like, there are plenty of people I don't discuss this with because it's like a lot of people get upset that I'm like, hey, saying what they're doing is wrong. If you're not mature enough to handle that discussion, I just won't have it with you because I'd rather it's not that big of a deal to me, and I'd rather just be friends and move on because it's not that fucking big of a deal. It really isn't. So
I would like to have, if it were up to me, we would have the aggers at the table with the LPs and say, okay, what do you guys what are you guys doing? And then this is what we're doing. This is what you guys are doing. Great. And then find, a unity movement. I'm not for that. That would be great, but I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking for everyone to agree that like we have the same end goal. We're going to try and capture hearts and minds with messaging from a political party standpoint. You guys are going to do it this way. If we both go at the same rate, we will, or even if we compete, whatever. But if we go, we all win. And so I don't necessarily believe that we all have to sing Kumbaya. That's not what I'm for at all. In fact, I don't want to sing Kumbaya with anybody. And if it were up to me, I would live in a place with no more than 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Like seriously. And if I could get it smaller from there, I'd get it smaller from there. But to say we're doing things wrong, LP National does things wrong. You know what I mean? Like they do things wrong. Their state affiliates that do things wrong. But for the most part, the regular Joes like me who are out there pounding pavement and trying to hand out flyers and shit, trying to get people to talk to me. I don't get involved. I don't fucking care. I don't care. I just want MC to be successful, and I want all these old LP people to go, these dinosaurs to go away. And but at the same time, if someone was like, I'm not down with this, I don't think the party's for me. Hey man, we also have this thing. Where I can have pamphlets for the agorists too. Here's a Conkin pamphlet. Go read this, because it's all the end, and so yeah, I wish everyone was just focused on helping get all these assholes out, like bullying them away or shit posting them away, whatever, voting them out, whatever. But yeah,
I will say from my perspective, it is kind of conflicting to me because I do like to dunk on the Sarwark types and some of it, but there is some aspect where it's like, okay, because I think it was Dave Casey posted something today or yesterday. It was like a meme of Sarwark being like, "Oh, we're driving the party into obscurity," and then it kind of made me think like, "Oh, well, me as the agorist, I should kind of like that because I'm genuinely the opinion I'd rather the party not exist, to be honest with you." But at the same time, there's part of me that's like, when I see Sarwarks or certain types say dumb shit, I'm just kind of like, well, fuck you. That's not libertarianism. But then another side of me is like, well, if I just let them do that, they're gonna kind of shoot themselves in the foot and make the party slowly wither away. So it's just I don't know which way to go. So there is some aspect of these shitty shits, kind of, in a sense, do my job for me and being like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have a libertarian party. Look at these assholes. But so there's that thing where you guys come in, the LPMC types, and you actually have this period of time where it's like, oh, look at this principled party or whatever. And it's and one of my main arguments is it's kind of almost like this wind in the sails of a shitty vehicle. So it's I'm of the opinion it will inevitably go back to shit. But it's you have this period of time where it's oh, look how great it is. And it's okay, but it's going to go back to shit. And it'll probably be a bigger piece of shit after you guys leave because you'll have built it up to be even a bigger, a bigger thing to be shitty.
Well, that was going to be my final point that you had made and we were going to talk about, was that, okay, fervor continues. We keep growing. LP Mises caucus is successful next year. And by success, I mean Angela McArdle will be chair. Then what? Okay, So that's what something that you brought up on the episode was, okay, you guys get here, then what? And then at what point are you not political? Are you political? Like, at what point do you become political because you're a party? And you're right. You're absolutely right. We're super anti all that, but then whenever the day comes and it's easy right now to be super anti, right? And to be antagonistic because we hate the people in charge. But when we're the people in charge, right? Do we then become the thing that we hate? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean, I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I mean, that's what the goal is. So at that point, what does our messaging do? Because we're the anti, especially Mises, right? Like anti all that. So I think that they I don't know. I'm sure you saw the tweet about communications, and they're going to hire somebody, and they need money to do it.
I briefly looked at that, but yeah, I saw that briefly. I didn't really
so
chance to soak it in.
Well, okay, so we hire this person, we create this position. We are Mises Caucus now, and we have this position. We have a person there to do it. What do we say? And how do we not become the thing we hate? And so that's the part that I think that I wish the higher ups would do a little bit more strategizing. And I'm sure they do strategize. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they talk about it all the time. But I wish they would communicate that further, that like when we are successful. And I think that having that solid when we are successful would attract more people. Because it's still like, oh, well, we may win. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably. And it's like, well, that doesn't attract anybody. No one wants to be a part of a losing team.
Yeah. Well, it's like let's say everything goes as planned, or at least what's been proposed as planned. And let's say they go in 2024, they have this big national movement. Let's say they even get on the debate stage, which we know it's not going to happen. Somehow they magically do. Dave Smith fucking slams it out of the park. Fucking everything's kick ass. A gigantic Ron Paul moment again. Then what? That is a point. And I know a lot of people are like, well, we got that Ron Paul moment, which, I mean, I'm going to be straight up. I don't think it's going to be a Ron Paul moment. I think you'll have probably some pretty dope moments from Dave, and that'll be about it. It'll be a slightly better Joe Jorgensen campaign. And it's not to say Dave is far beyond the level of JoJo, but it's like a matter of like, it's a matter of like getting the name out there, getting the message out there. He's not going to get the debate stage. But even then, even we grant all that, it's kind of like, okay, but what after that? Like, so what happens then?
Then do we direct people to you?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, it is a matter of like what happens then. I know. I guess like Heiss has said before about how he's big on like the localism movement. I don't know. It is what happens after that. And I do think that it will eventually, fall back into shit. And the people who have this kind of energy that we're talking about, the LPMC types, the Dave Smith types, they're going to slowly lose their fervor. They're going to get burnt out with like, what are we even doing here? It's the same. Literally, it's going to be the same exact thing happened in the Ron Paul moment. Like a lot of people don't realize that. Like I talked to Eric Brakey on my show about this, and he was talking about how like when the Ron Paul moment was over, like how all these people just kind of petered out, and they were just like, like all these people who are all like gung ho, just like they're gone, and they're like, what's left? And you end up with what?
These assholes.
Yeah, and
these
so
crazy people.
Yeah, and it's like, and a lot of people be like, oh, cool. Well, we got. I mean, this is especially easier to put in the context of an LP. Let's say we get, a few good, LP guys who kind of get their name in the mix. But it's like, but what was the other side of that? The other side of that is we ended up propping up this fucking party that's kind of shit now. And like, and yeah, cool. What did we get? We got we kind of propped up Spike a little bit or some shit, and maybe Dave. Although I think Dave, if I had to guess, I think Dave would be one of those ones that over time would kind of be like, what are we doing here? And probably would just leave. Like that's just my feeling. I think he would just get disenchanted by it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just my feeling.
I think if 2020, if next year in Reno doesn't go the way we want it to, he'll be disenchanted.
Yeah.
Because it all rides on getting an MC in the chair position. I mean, that's what all this boils down to. It's not Dave 2024, it's Angela McCardle 2022. And from there, that's where the road to success starts. If she doesn't get it and we don't have the votes, then yeah, then I'll burn the shit down personally. You know,
I mean, I think she will. At the same time, I don't know. They've been getting more and more brazen. The other kinds with some of the shit they've been pulling, and this is kind of where we talked about with like platform stuff earlier. You were kind of insinuating. It's kind of like, for example, like I talked about that Carrie Ann Harlow's tweet. Like a lot of people brought up, like, oh well, it's the fucking LP platform that it's repugnant and irrational racism, and it's kind of like, I actually think that's one of the worst things for the platform, and it sounds like kind of silly to be like, hey, you know how you guys say you're against racism? I think that's the worst thing about you guys. It's not even necessarily that I'm like not against racism. It's that, okay, but now what is racism? So now you get to guys to be like, well, this is against our platform. They can even probably say some shit like, oh, well, racism is against NAP. And then they find some clip of fucking Dave Smith on Tower Gang one time and they go, oh, well, look at this shit he said. Look at this joke. This fucking breaks NAP. This breaks our platform. And you're like, so they get to play these games. And at the end of the day, as long as they get the votes, that's all that fucking matters. So, like, I don't know. It gets to weird place. And it's when you're playing these political games. So I am of the opinion, I think that it's likely that she gets the chair position. And I also think it's likely that Dave Smith is 2024 candidate. And I also think it's likely that Dave Smith probably does better than any LP candidate ever does. But what then? But even then, all those things I just said, there is that like, well, what there is that like a possibility along the way that gets fucked up. So I don't know. It is interesting. It is curious to see how this ends up working out. I don't fucking know. It is wild. Some of the like the Prags or whatever. I guess the Prags aren't there anymore, but they're basically there. It is pretty wild to see some of the shit they're doing in some places. Now they're getting frantic, but at the same the same time, it's not really much of a recompense for them either. So I don't know. So we'll see. It's interesting. I don't know.
That's just all. I'm with you though. My thoughts are always in, okay, what then?
Yeah.
You know, okay, what then? So what does 2023 look like? You know, and like, you know, 2022 will be interesting. I'm excited for Reno. I'll be in Reno. And we are gonna I think we're gonna kick ass. And everyone's been studying up on their Robert's rules, so they can't get us like that. You know, and I really hope we are successful. I don't want to have 15 years of my political life for naught. I'm okay if it is, because that's politics. That's the nature of it. But if I could have one glimmer of success at all next year, I'll be stoked. And then, like I said, if it all goes to hell, then you know, I'll be the first one to light a torch and get the guillotine out. Trust me. But yeah, so cool. Well, that was fun. Go ahead, Jose, and plug away. Let everyone know where they can find you and listen to you.
I have the No Way Jose show. I'm on YouTube. I'm on all the major audio podcatchers. I'm on Odyssey as well. If you would like to support my work, I'm at patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. I don't know when you're dropping this, but I'm about to have Jason Stapleton on Thursday for those who are interested. That will be behind the paywall. But if you don't want to pay me, go to Odyssey. It will. I mean, you won't be able to do the stream because I don't set the stream for every time. But as soon as it's done, it will be up there and you can check it out. So that's my way to incentivize going to Odyssey, because I think everyone should try to go to Odyssey if they can. So if you want to be able to get my content before it goes up public, like on YouTube and the audio podcatchers, go to Odyssey. Go do that. Otherwise, give me $2 a month or more. CD is one of my premium. Fucking. She's my sugar mama. Gives me $20 a month. She's on my sponsor levels. But yeah, go do that. I think you guys will enjoy it. I've had a lot of good guests. I've had Dave Smith. I've had a lot of good guests. I've had a lot of good guests.
And you've done great. You've
Yeah.
done great. You're one of my favorite Patreons for sure. Everything you
appreciate
give us, I really appreciate it. So yeah, so if you don't, for as the low price of $2, you can have this man entertain you for hours, really. If you do the cumulative math. But yeah, awesome, Jose. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this.
Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
She would say she knows enough, and she's never wrong. Try not to think of it in terms of right and wrong. She is a guide.